get back to it. Thank you. All right, we're now going to do public comment, 3 minutes each, and then a few minutes for a bit of rebuttal. But public goes first. Thank you all, because we also have another hearing to hold if there's anybody else still waiting and want to get to that. First, and he may have had to leave, I have Shahram Karagani from the city of LA. Shahram, have to go? Oh, are you going to speak for him?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm reading his testimony, but right now it's 5 minutes. I'll try to go fast. But good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Donna Chen. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Shahram Karagani, the Stormwater Program Manager for the City of Los Angeles, who would have liked to address the board, but unfortunately he had to leave just before your break. So
Sorry.
I'm here to read the testimony. The City of Los Angeles appreciates the opportunity to provide comments on the draft order. We thank the board's effort to provide stakeholders this workshop to engage in these important issues and provide input. As we have previously indicated, the city supports the Watershed Management Program and Enhanced Watershed Management Program as outlined in the MS4 permit. In particular, the WIMP-EWIMP elements provide a constructive way for us to comply with provisions of the permit. As we're all aware, Los Angeles and California as a whole are currently experiencing extreme drought. The completed 2013-2014 rain season was the 7th driest year in Los Angeles since record-keeping began in 1877. To address the drought crisis, the City of Los Angeles Mayor passed Directive Number 5, which directs the city to take steps to support and implement practices for water conservation, as well as stormwater capture and reuse. In addition, the city's One Water planning approach links multi-benefit efforts for water reuse, conservation, and other stormwater and water quality activities. Examples of ongoing and completed projects that capture stormwater, increase water conservation, as well as reduced pollution to our rivers, lakes, and ocean include Echo Park and Machado Lake Rehab Project, which will significantly improve water quality in the lakes, our South Los Angeles Wetlands Project that converted a former industrial yard into a green space that cleans up water, the Govanza Park Project, which enhances water quality and is expected to capture and use 50 acre-feet of stormwater runoff per year, and the North Atwater Creek Restoration, which improves the water quality of water draining from a 60-acre sub-watershed area to the Los Angeles River. We've also implemented Green Street standard plans, passed a landmark low-impact development ordinance. In many city streets and parking lots, there are permeable pavements and bioretention cells that were installed. These projects are multi-purpose, address multiple pollutants, support beneficial use of runoff, and in addition, restore habitat and beautify the community. These types of projects are what the MS4 permit encourages. That is why the city believes that the approach in the MS4 plays an important role in the city's drought crisis and water quality improvement efforts. It signifies a very important shift in the implementation of stormwater programs in the Los Angeles region that encourage the use of multi-benefit regional projects to capture, infiltrate, and reuse stormwater. For these reasons, we express our support for the general provisions and approach of the order. And in closing, we'd like again to express our appreciation for these efforts of the State Board as well as the Regional Board staff in the thoughtful development of this water-based approach. In particular, I want to thank Mr. Unger, Mr. Ridgway, Ms. Smith, and Ms. Purdy of RB4 for their leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you joining, and please give Shahram my apologies. Drew Kleiss, Deputy Director of the City of San Diego. Oh, and after that, Heather Stroud. You may be coming together.
Good afternoon, and you did get my last name right. It's German, it's Kleiss. My name is Drew Kleiss. I'm the Deputy Director with the City of San Diego Stormwater Division. I want to start off by really thanking you for your engaged participation today. I'm in the last row there, but it's obvious from there that you're paying attention, you're asking the tough questions. That's refreshing to see. At the same time, I know what time it is. We need to catch a train, and I know that you're probably reaching a point of, or nearly a point of imperviousness. So let me start with the punchline and kind of tell you what our single and main point is, and then I'll get to the written comments real quick. And that is that we're trying to ramp up our program. We're trying to ramp up right now significantly to meet our mandates, to meet our water quality goals, the shared goals we all have. And that program and our ability to ramp up could really be bolstered if it also, if we had this compliance option. And that's because compliance and funding, they're kind of like friends. Well, maybe they're not friends, they're more like an arranged marriage. When you have compliance, usually funding hangs around it, and when you have funding, usually compliance shows up. So what we want to do is sprinkle and cover our plans with compliance, because we want to attract some funding and be able to justify it. That's the bottom line. We're all after water quality, and I think that this compliance option, we talked about incentives today, it's the biggest one, is just having this option. We support it. Quickly now to the written comments. We appreciate your support for linking watershed-based compliance to receiving water limitations. The City of San Diego wants to see the State Board take an additional step today. We would appreciate your support for requiring the inclusion of the alternative compliance option in all MS4 permits, rather than simply making it a regional board consideration. We make this request because the compliance option is vitally important to our efforts to grow and expand our stormwater program to meet our shared stormwater quality goals. Our permit requires the development of and implementation of watershed plans similar to the watershed plans in Los Angeles. And by the way, I think the name really doesn't do them any favors. It's not wimpy. It's a pretty incredible, difficult plan. Today, this effort shows that the City of San Diego has an estimated compliance cost to meet TMDLs and ASBS requirements of more than $3.9 billion over the next 17 years. That figure has been reported to our bond rating agencies, and it's used to identify our annual budget requests. It's real, and we're using it. However, our draft watershed plans lack one real critical component, the compliance option. That significant ramp up that's identified in these plans is having an impact on local decision making. The city's leadership is committed to protecting and improving water quality. At the same time, they're also committed to compliance, a fundamental consideration when making budget decisions. You have an opportunity through this order to ensure these two commitments are not at odds with one another, and in fact, by bringing them together, they can further those goals. So just in conclusion, we support the compliance option, and we ask that you make it something that the regional boards have to include in the MS4 permit statewide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the levity, too. That's helpful late in the day.
Good afternoon. I'm Heather Stroud. I'm a Deputy City Attorney with the City of San Diego. I do want to thank you and echo Drew's comments for your engagement today. It has been impressive. And also thank you for the very well-reasoned draft order. I can tell a lot of work went into it, and it's impressive. Also, thank you for upholding the WIMP and EWIMP approach in the LA permit, which I think was innovative and a very good approach to compliance. Also, thank you for requiring other regional boards to consider an alternative compliance approach. And this is an issue of statewide importance and significance, and the guidance from you to other regional boards is much appreciated. Unfortunately, the City of San Diego and other San Diego County permittees are in the unenviable position that Casco mentioned, is we have a permit that has the receiving water limitations language, but no compliance alternative. Also, we are required to do watershed planning called water quality improvement plans, but it does not have a compliance linkage to it. So we've kind of done the groundwork to have that compliance pathway, but it's currently not in our permit. So we would request that the draft order be amended and strengthened to require some type of alternative compliance pathway be included in MS4 permits across California, and the principles that are set forth in the draft order do seem to be appropriate guidance on that respect. The draft order does recognize that compliance with receiving water limitations provisions in MS4 permits may not be possible during the 5-year permit term, and we do appreciate that recognition. Given that recognition, you know, it's an untenable situation to have a permit with the language from 9905, but not have an alternative compliance option. We do believe that the alternative compliance option is a rigorous and transparent compliance path, and it puts accountability and liability in the right place on actions that are within our control. So thank you, and again, we do ask that the draft order be amended to require some type of alternative compliance option in MS4 permits, and I do like the request that Casqua made also to ask regional boards to reopen the permits to do that instead of waiting for the next permit issuance, which may be as long as 5 years out. And we will be submitting more detailed written comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Blum from the Malibu Surfing Association, followed by Jonathan Parachot from the River Project. So far, you have absolutely the best handwriting. I just want you to know. I'm going to have you write everything. Are you an architect?
No.
Really good.
Are you an engineer?
I'm available.
Are you an engineer?
Hope springs eternal.
Madam Chair and board members, good day. My name is Michael Blum, and I am with the Malibu Surfing Association. I'm here today as an unpaid volunteer, a member of that organization, and a current officer serving as stewardship chair of MSA. Formed in 1961, MSA is one of California's oldest surfing clubs. Our home break is world-famous Malibu Surfrider Beach, one of surfing's few perfect waves, and dedicated in 2010 as the first World Surfing Reserve for its contribution to the history and culture of the sport. Our members collectively represent over 800 years of surfing. We value living near the coast, we value surfing as our primary recreational activity, and we value Malibu and other Los Angeles County beaches as exactly those coastal resources where most of our surfing takes place. All of which is a way to say that we are a face of your decisions. We directly enjoy the benefits of improved treatment of stormwater and dry weather runoff, but the converse is also true. The value of our recreation experience, if not our own health, is compromised by poor water quality. And so with this link between our recreational experience and water quality, that is to say, a link between ourselves and an MS4 permit, I'm here today to affirm some of the recommendations made by others. One, to maintain strict compliance with water quality standards as included in the 2001 permit. Two, to seek and support multi-benefit solutions to stormwater pollution. Three, to continue to value stormwater as an asset. And four, to clearly separate the rights, responsibilities, and benefits between watershed and enhanced watershed management programs. We commend the permittees for their effort, including significant investments as they work toward compliance. We absolutely recognize, as they do too, that the draft order builds upon new approaches to stormwater programs. These efforts notwithstanding, however, we urge strict accountability through the MS4 permit as a salient means to achieve water quality objectives. Building alone cannot ensure compliance. A house unoccupied is structure only, not shelter. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and my best wishes to you all and to staff for the holiday season.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, the Taquito Place, sitting at Malibu. I spent a lot of time there watching surfers. Sorry. Just going back to high school here. Can't help it. I'm happy. Mr. Parachot, and then John Capoccia from Sierra Madre.
Good afternoon, late afternoon. And my name is Jonathan Parachot, which you got right. I am with the River Project, and I am here representing us on the issues of the MS4 permit. Of course, we have a mission and a long history of working on water resources in the region, and we are strong advocates of watershed and distributed systems, low-impact development, and best management practices. As others have stated, we note that stormwater is a leading contributor of water pollution. We know that means that throughout our systems, both rains and dry weather flows are picking up a lot of pollutants that aren't being treated locally. There is also limited land to dedicate to water management compared against the footprints of roads, residential properties, and other land uses. Holistic and distributed methods across all land uses for water capture, conservation, and reuse are crucial for managing pollutant loads, in addition to many other benefits. Incentives and provisions that assist implementation of these methods are important. That being said, we also interpret the 2012 MS4 permit to have a gap in the statement of watershed approaches. As has been stated, if an agency engages in a watershed management approach, safe harbor provisions protect against accountability for water quality violations, even if there is data that clearly indicates that efforts are not sufficient, which is a big issue. Effort is important, but effort is not the same as success. Through our research and experience, we observe that distributed systems can be exceptionally functional in not only meeting but exceeding water quality goals. However, there are many possible strategies in different scales. Standards are necessary to set the goals that we need to meet and exceed as we choose strategy combinations. We've heard about costs of implementation, but we must also consider the costs of failures to act in an increasingly unstable and changing environment, particularly with respect to essential interrelated issues. Sending large quantities of water out to the ocean is not only a contamination issue, but undermining for stability in a drought-prone region with a geologic history of megadroughts. We have an imperative for unprecedented efforts, collaboration, and mechanisms for shared investments to prepare for our uncertain future. Relying on case-by-case interpretations by individuals, from the EWIMP process, as much as we appreciate the efforts, to oversight, individuals that will come and go can't be enough. There has already been many interpretations here today, which is already good reason from our perspective that compliance with water quality standards must be a mandate that is clearly outlined for all approaches, as in the 2001 permit, to continue driving our efforts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thanks for appreciating and capturing the complexity in 3 minutes. That's amazing. John Capoccia? Sorry. Okay. Next time, when we actually do the hearing on this, I'm just looking at everybody, that we won't have anything else on the agenda, and we'll have overflow for the next day in case we need it. Okay? I anticipate the stakes will be a little higher than so. Antonio Lopez, City of San Fernando, followed by Dr. Tom Williams, the Citizens Coalition for Safe Communities.
Good afternoon, Chair, Marcus, and board members. My name is Kenneth Jones from the City of San Fernando Public Works Department, and I'm speaking on behalf of Councilmember Antonio Lopez, and the following are his comments. On behalf of the City of San Fernando, I would like to thank the State Board for validating the Stormwater Management Program and iterative process as means of complying with water quality standards. The board's action is welcomed by my community, which is part of an enhanced watershed management program group. Although we are continuing to move forward with this effort, we are very concerned that once the EWIMP is finished, it may be too costly to implement. My community, like many others in the state, has had to make difficult decisions as we slowly emerge from the Great Recession. This is why it is so important that the board provide a mechanism that allows for the iterative process to be a valid compliance option. I appreciate the opportunity to share my comments with you. I would respectfully ask that the board approve a final draft order that clearly states that the Stormwater Management Program iterative process is a valid compliance option. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Tom Williams, followed by Judy Nelson, Councilperson, City of Glendora.
Good afternoon, late. Dr. Tom Williams, Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community, Sierra Club Water Committee. Some basics. We will be submitting written comments during the period that's allowed. We have some basic issues. Backsliding. We were quite interested in backsliding, but then we also started reading shall accommodate economic and social development in the area, and that's balanced with maximum benefits to the people of the state. Then there's anticipated future uses, whatever that means. But then we get back to best practical treatment and controls, and the maximum extent practical. Practical. And as evidenced by today, a lot of people are concerned regarding the costs. 5 years ago, I said, we can't afford it. That was at $50 for stormwater fee from the County of Los Angeles. And I asked, if I have zero discharge from my 13,000 square feet, do I get zero costs? No, I have to pay the full fee. So there's some basic issues there. Last week we had a large rain. Let's say that it was a 3/4 inch rain. Based upon complete LID compliance by every single family dwelling in the city of Los Angeles, we would have captured something like 50 million gallons. However, we would have discharged 230 million gallons. Because when you say LID and the 85th percentile and everything like that, comes back to the basics. Every permit that has more than so many square feet additional area only are required to put in 2 rain barrels, total 110 gallons, whereas a 1,000 square foot roof generates 460 gallons. Therefore, the LID application in real time is totally inadequate. There's also a matter, how long?
That's just rain barrels, though, right?
You need an intermediate transportation container, one of the big boxes. That's about 400 and some odd gallons. You need 8, 10 of rain barrels.
You should look into getting a fence, as kind of a fence that acts as a cistern. You could hold a whole lot
Well,
more water.
here's the spin on it. If you're a multifamily dwelling and or commercial, you have to have 460 gallons of storage capacity for every 1,000 square foot of roof. So there's some issues there. So it won't work the way it's presented. So you might say you're having backsliding on a slippery slope. We will be submitting written comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Nelson, Councilwoman, City of Glendora. Matt O'Malley, San Diego Coastkeeper. You look familiar. That's who you are.
Good afternoon, Matt O'Malley, Legal and Policy Director for San Diego Coastkeeper. Thanks for having me here today. I'm really here only to comment on 2 particular pages of the order, ones that I didn't expect to see in the order, actually, that very much, to me, feel like a directive to other regional boards to implement this type of approach. And in reading it, I kind of liken it to a Supreme Court ruling that could have happened narrowly, but really was pretty expansive. So to that extent, I obviously agree with our partner organizations that gave a presentation this morning, our environmental groups, and have made similar comments in front of our own regional board a couple of years ago when we adopted our own regional permit. But we do believe that the safe harbor creates some backsliding issues under the Clean Water Act. And I kind of, San Diego did consider this when we adopted our permit and chose not to include a safe harbor for several reasons. I want to very briefly look at some of the assumptions made for the exception of backsliding here and address them and actually say more particularly why I don't think they apply to San Diego. They do mention this paradigm shift, and I understand. I think it's one that we're very supportive of. We were doing our own permit as well. Looking towards integrated water management is something we're very supportive of. We were able to still look at those things and develop a pretty robust permit that allows us to have the carrot that allows people to move towards things, but keep the stick in the back pocket. Because a lot of times, in my experience, the carrot isn't much good without the stick still being there. And I think this approach actually does that. Secondly, the draft order really, it justifies the exemption partly on the development of the 33 TMDLs that exist in LA. San Diego, we have a handful of them. We really do. We don't have anything like that number. So I want to take this opportunity to briefly just caution the board on using information and processes gained in the TMDL in Los Angeles and extrapolating that to the rest of the state. For one, as I mentioned, San Diego doesn't have the TMDLs that LA has. And really, our region, which you may or may not know, is more reluctant to adopt TMDLs, and we often look to TMDL alternatives. There's a few in the past years I could point towards. Those don't necessarily have the definitive measures that TMDLs have that we can point to for these measurable progresses. That receiving water limitations do have that, and they remain our backstop. Really, without the receiving water limitations, San Diego Coastkeeper, our members, don't have anything to point to show that the regions are, the people in our region are making progress towards, like they're supposed to under the Clean Water Act. I want to briefly talk about prioritization. It was brought up by the County of San Diego, and I actually think prioritization is a good example of why we do need the receiving water quality limitations. It calls for prioritization, as ours does, our permit does, but compliance with a process rather than the standard, it very well could lead to a degradation of water quality in some of these lower priority, or what I call orphaned watersheds or sub-watersheds. If you take away the RWLs, what you're doing is essentially giving, you could have a safe harbor, which gives sort of excuse for things you're working really hard to address, and an excuse for those things you're not working as hard at addressing. And so I think that's why it's really important to keep the receiving water limitations in there. I just very want to briefly say in closing, I'll bring up a point that my colleague from City of San Diego mentioned as far as compliance options equal funding. In my opinion, if receiving water limitations don't equal funding, and there's strict holdings of that, then I don't know how compliance options will equal funding. So really what I'm asking you is, if you're Supreme Court here, just rule narrowly. We went through this process a couple of years ago, and I think we developed what's a good permit, and I ask that in this order, you strictly apply this to LA, although I do, again, share the same concerns that my colleagues do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Well, actually, and maybe this is a discussion point, but you talked about having the backstop, and the safe harbor discussion we've heard all day, but our draft order and the LA board item went to great pains to detail all of the points of transparency and accountability and deadlines and milestones that are associated with having a WMP process. Right. Do you think, that kind of structure speaks to some of the concern?
I don't know that it does, and I'll tell you why. My personal experience, we have these WQIPs, which are very similar in San Diego. We have 11 of them throughout our watersheds. I can say, probably unless anybody else in the room wants to stand up, I may be the sole person trying to review all of these from the environmental perspective. They're in the several hundreds of pages at this point. So to really, I understand it's a transparent process, but to really get into them and see if they're justified, if they're appropriate to actually meeting, especially if you take away the receiving water quality limitations, I don't know that that oversight actually exists besides outside the board. So, and I do think that, again, if you couple all the TMDLs that may exist in LA, and you do have some of those other requirements, those are concrete requirements, we simply don't have those in San Diego. We have a handful of them. So I think that coupled with some of these, whims and whatnot, actually lead to a more robust, in our situation, again, and I don't favor it in the case of LA, I don't want to make, allude to that, but I think that, in our case, it actually is one of the justifications in this permit to basically say anti-backsliding is not an issue, was all of these TMDLs that apply and the process that went into developing them and the information that came out of them. It just doesn't exist down in San Diego. Again, a lot of these issues came up with us a couple of years ago. We were thankful that our regional board didn't adopt them. And as I read this, and I've talked to a couple of the regional board folks in San Diego, it seems that even within their office, they're not sure, is this a directive? Is it a request? How to read that? And so if nothing else, at least clarify what that language means there. Thank you.
I assume the water quality improvement plans also have monitoring, adaptive update requirements.
Yes, they do. The robustness of those requirements is yet to be seen. So they are required to update them, sort of like the iterative process. But again, they still have that backdrop of the receiving water limitation. So, they sort of guide, again, it's the carrot that allows you get more towards integrated water management, but the stick is still there. The regional board chose not to give that up.
Right, sharpens the mind, as they say.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being so succinct in your comments. I would hope that you will follow up with written comments.
I plan to,
with more
yes.
Details.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'm also taking away, don't decide the appeal on your permit in this permit. Joyce Dillard, followed by Alex Hedren.
Hello. I'm a citizen that follows water, and I live in Los Angeles. And I can tell you what I will trust for stormwater infiltration is the LADWP Stormwater Capture Master Plan, and this is a big waste of money. You're mixing things that maybe the state wants, maybe the county of San Francisco wants, but it's not how it's run, at least in the guerrilla part of Los Angeles. And I've followed LA for the last 10 years every day. That's what I do as a hobby, basically. And others do it also. Most of us are retired. And we're not seeing this translated in things we can work with. CEQA doesn't have it. I write a lot on CEQA. There's hardly an environmental impact report anymore. It's mostly mitigated negative decks. This doesn't apply. There's no adaptive management in this order at all. I've been around the Office of Planning and Research with the governor. I wrote on the greenhouse gas regulations 4 times with responses from them. I write on a lot of regulations. They were talking about, I asked for a clearinghouse. They did like a CalAdapt, a science. You look at where you are. You need to look at your land use, all the factors that fit into it, and then you do it. I live by the LA River, 2 fault lines. Do you think I want water infiltrated? Do you think I want an earthquake at my home? My friends live in the Fairfax area. Tar comes up through the basements. They have to haul the tar away because of the oil in the area. This is not only La Brea tar pits, it's oil and methane issues. You can't do it here.
You can't
We're
do it everywhere,
different.
that's true.
Beg your pardon?
You can't do it everywhere. It's the geologic point
No.
that somebody made. It depends on the geology of that particular location.
And that's what adaptive management is. It's just not a word, it's practice. And I can say the city doesn't practice, the planning people don't practice it. We have an infrastructure report card that's supposed to be part of the framework element, part of the general plan. That counts, okay? They hid the 2010 one from everyone. They just came out with the 2014 one, says nothing about costs. 2010, the BMPs for this last permit was like 2.65 billion. It's unreachable. Can't bear it. I've been around Propo, which is our $500 million thing. South LA wetlands, yes, they bring in water now, and they're bringing in a purple pipe because they really don't clean the water. Echo Park now has a red-green plume because they destroyed the fishing. This was a big fishing area for the folks around there. And I've been at a SCAG event recently last week or 2 weeks ago. They want to kill CEQA. And your key to working this is through something we can work with, the public can work with, because you completely left us out. The Southern California Leadership Committee, our ex-governors, they want to kill CEQA. They want to build the economy, it's jobs, jobs, jobs. This isn't going to go anywhere but cost a lot of money. I deal with disadvantaged communities. I'm in one. I see other cities. I grew up in a smaller city, so I can apply what happens in a smaller city, though I'm in a huge city now. It's not feasible. I'm all for water quality. I'm all for things like that, but there's an economic development part of just having this in the NPDES permit. You really got to apply it in a much better way. It's just words, no results, and costly to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Caution. Alex Hedren, followed by Brent Alex.
Hi, good afternoon all. My name is Alex Hendren, and I'm here today as a concerned resident of Venice, California. As an active person, I spend a lot of time running, swimming, and generally recreating along the coast of Santa Monica Bay. I've seen firsthand what is left over from storms and the outwashes along Santa Monica Beach, near the mouth of Bayona Creek in Marina del Rey, and in Venice's oft-flooded coastal streets just outside my home. Consequently, I have serious concerns about urban runoff's effect on our local water quality and the impact it has on humans and marine species alike. If you've seen and smelled the massive anchovy die-off in Marina del Rey last spring, I'm sure you'd feel my concern, if you don't already. All of the stressors we put on marine systems, including pollution from runoff, make events like that much more likely. I eagerly await a time when I won't have to worry about clearing space on the beach before laying down my towel or checking the beach report card before taking a swim. I feel strongly that it is important to keep pushing local municipalities to improve local stormwater management and improve the quality of water that runs into Santa Monica Bay. I ask the board to eliminate the safe harbor provision to hold parties accountable in the stewardship of our communities and our local natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brent Alex. Karen Flores, Friends of the LA River, followed by Jeanette Vosberg from Grassroots Coalition. Save Bayona.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Flores. I'm with Friends of the Los Angeles River. Many of you may know that our organization was the original grassroots organization that brought people's attention to the river, its history, and vision of its future. So we envision a swimmable, fishable, boatable, bikeable Los Angeles River with a greenway from the mountains to the sea. We bring the people to the river and the river to the people, and we have had some tremendous success in the last few years. I'm sure you've read about it and seen it yourself. So what that means is that we have a lot more attention and recreational activity on the river. So we were leaders in access and use, which has resulted in a few thousand people kayaking the river every summer since 2011. There is a new surge of fishing. We held our first annual fishing derby this year. We had fly fisher people and we had children learning about fishing. We had a fish study in 2008, and now we are expanding our fish studies to Long Beach, and in 2015 to Sepulveda Basin. And of course, this year will be our 26th annual LA River Cleanup, where we bring 4,000 volunteers to pull 25 tons of trash out of about 14 sites over 3 weekends. So not only is access and use and stewardship up, attention is up, to the point that during this drought, I had reporters calling my cell phone asking me, why are we letting all that water go down the river to the ocean? And those calls didn't used to come. So awareness on the river as a resource, as something of pride, as a center of our city. There's a $1 billion plan in the wings for revitalization that is triggering a lot of activity. The attention's not going to go away, it's only going to increase, and so achieving our goals of water quality are essential. So we asked the State Board to remove the safe harbor provisions and maintain the requirement for strict compliance with water quality standards from the 2001 permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jeanette Vosberg? So we missed 4. Great, that concludes the public comment. Thank you very much for your patience and attention on that. There was we have closing comments from the LA board, but hold on for a second. We did have some request for rebuttal. I'm conscious of the fact that there is another hearing. I don't know, is anybody here for that final hearing who wanted to, the final item, it's not a hearing. Yeah, what? You don't think so. So did everybody talk to Lisa Babcock who wanted to? Everyone spoke. Great. Okay, well, that works. Okay, I just want to make sure, so I'm not keeping people waiting on that other issue. I know it's the end of the day, so people are anxious to go, but there was a request for a couple of points of rebuttal from Mr. Fleischle on behalf of the environmentalists, so sorry, you too. Everybody keeps saying NRDC. It's NRDC, LA Waterkeeper, and Heal the Bay. Just want to be clear on that. Can't be NRDC centric. But I don't actually want everyone to come back up and do 2 minutes, and there'll be plenty of time. You can if you really want to, but the point of this workshop is to illuminate for us, particularly because the 5 of us can't talk to each other. We can't talk to any of you. So the opportunity is to give us stuff that we need to bear in mind as we work with staff, as we move towards the reading your comments that are come in and get through this whole process. So I don't want to cut people off, but I think succinct and to the point would be most helpful, and we'll close with the City of LA.
Thank you. I had 2 points I wanted to make, and Liz had 1 point she wanted to make.
No, sorry, LA Regional Board. Sorry. I'm being LA City centric. Sorry.
So I will be succinct. I'll leave out the joke I was going to tell.
Yeah.
some of the comments
wait, tell the
focused.
joke.
Keep the joke?
Keep the joke, yeah.
Okay, I will keep the joke. So a number of folks today commented on the trash TMDL and the success of the trash TMDL and how the trash TMDL could be used as a model for what we're doing here. And I agree with that. I do think the trash TMDL can be used as a model. But it makes me think back to the vice presidential debate between Dan Quayle and Alan Benson. When Dan Quayle compared himself to John Kennedy, and Lloyd Benson said, I knew Jack Kennedy. He was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy. Well, I know the trash TMDL. I helped negotiate the trash TMDL with John Bishop, Michael Loffer, Mark Gold, Shahram Karagami, who had to leave. And this is no trash TMDL. And I want to read you the language so you can understand why that is. The trash TMDL, the operative language, and John likes to say, well, there's full capture and there's partial capture. But the operative language in the Basin Plan Amendment is the full capture language. And it says, compliance with the final waste load allocation may be achieved through a full capture system. A full capture system is any device or series of devices that traps all particles retained by a 5mm mesh screen and has a design treatment capacity of not less than the peak flow rate resulting from a 1-year, 1-hour storm in the sub-drainage area. Now, compare that and the specificity of that to the Enhanced Watershed Management Plan language, let alone the Watershed Management Program language. Now, the EWIMP language says, and EWIMP is one that comprehensively evaluates opportunities for projects that, wherever feasible, retain all stormwater runoff from the 85th percentile 24-hour storm event. Much mushier, much more flexibility. And that's why they're not the same. Now, Richard Watson pointed out, and I agree with him, he said, look, some of the WIMPs are embracing stormwater capture too. And I think that's a fair point to make. We shouldn't judge all of these plans the same. But by the same token, we shouldn't give them all the same relief. If folks are embracing capture, maybe we need to consider special accommodations. If they're doing it in a very meaningful way, and if the permit is very specific about what is required, as opposed to this mealy-mouthed, mushy language about how they can pursue or consider or undertake efforts, best efforts. That is not the same as the trash TMDL, and I think most municipalities and most folks would agree that the trash TMDL has been successful. Now, Ken Farsing said there was no litigation on the TMDL, or at least his slide said there was no litigation. He said there was no litigation over the implementation. Some cities did, in fact, sue over the trash TMDL in both federal and state courts, but now most of those cities are in compliance with the trash TMDL, and they've moved forward, and they've seen that you can marry a technology-based approach with a water quality approach if you're very deliberate about it. The last point I wanted to make is I know how busy you all are, but if you do one thing, I'd really like you to read the 2001 hearing transcript from the adoption of the permit. The tone here today is very different from that, but the arguments are really very much the same.
What do you mean?
In terms of some of the legal arguments that have been made about obligations to comply with Water Code Section 13241, Water Code Section 1300, the cost benefit, those sorts of equations, but also the difficulty of having to comply and being in immediate non-compliance and how people are going to have to move forward. The concern that, well, the only solution we have is we're going to have to treat, this was a study done by USC on behalf of some of the cities, to treat every drop of rainwater in Los Angeles through reverse osmosis would cost somewhere upward of $200 billion. And this was the argument folks were making back then about we're going to have to go to gray infrastructure, we don't know what else to do. And yet there were other solutions that were on the table that people were ignoring. So I would encourage you just to look at that to understand some of the history and how history is repeating itself here today with the arguments around the safe harbor. The same arguments were made in 2001, and the board rejected the safe harbor. You're given that same opportunity today. And I want to let Liz finish with her point.
Very brief. I just want to tag on the issue of gray versus green infrastructure. And we've talked about it. It's been stated a couple times today. Green infrastructure and these types of multi-benefit projects, they're less expensive and they involve multiple benefits. We've been talking
Well, they
about
might be more expensive, but they involve multiple benefits.
they'll be less expensive, and at least they have been in practice, and that's, I mean, and most of the, I think a important point is that most of the gray infrastructure that's been implemented, whether it's diversions or treatment plants, has really been designed around treating non-storm water. And we're seeing more and more municipalities, especially City of LA, for instance, using green infrastructure to address both non and storm water. And so not only are they addressing both issues, but they're having the benefits of things like flood control and the economic benefits that was, mentioned, as well as, the community and green space benefits. So I think that, it's a little premature to have this sort of fear about, well, we're all going to just turn to gray infrastructure when we haven't even really seen what it looks like to do a broad-based, wide-scale green infrastructural approach in Los Angeles. And there are other places in the nation, too, that have been implementing it and seeing success. So I think that we really need to focus on the value that we get out of these projects, and that is part of the incentive. And even if you have compliance with receiving water limitations, and if you did even consider our alternative approach, that still incentivizes that green infrastructure. It still gives time through a time schedule order, but it provides some time, it provides some certainty, it provides enforceability. But it does it in an enforcement order, which I think is very appropriate at this time, not as punishment, but as acknowledgement that we need to have some accountability when it comes to the permittees under the municipal stormwater permit. And I would just add that if the only concern is third-party lawsuits, then that might be the true Loch Ness Monster here. So, thank you.
Mr. Montevideo?
Madam Chair, may I have 2 minutes to
Yep.
respond to there are some comments about the trash TMDL litigation, et cetera, and how the trash TMDL reads and what the intent of our comments were. I was involved in the trash TMDL litigation, and there was 2 trash TMDLs. I think it's important to keep that in mind. The initial trash TMDL had 1 compliance measure, the vortex separation units. Very costly, not practical. The litigation pursued. We prevailed on CEQA grounds, so there was not per se litigation over actual implementation of the second TMDL. But the second TMDL was then adopted, and included in that, as Mr. Bishop knows, was a provision that allowed for additional deemed compliance measures. And as a part of that, there was also a provision that allowed for people to petition for additional deemed compliance measures. And the point of it is to say, it's a zero trash TMDL. The concerns that the cities had at the time was that we can't possibly meet zero trash. It's just not possible. So give us a deemed compliance approach where if we implement appropriate BMPs to reduce the level of trash, then we're in compliance, even if there's trash in the LA River. And ultimately what happened was, through the iteration and after they went back and redid the trash TMDL, included additional compliance measures, yes, there was no litigation. The process has worked. Even Mr. Fleischle acknowledges that he endorses it. So that's the approach that we're talking about here. Is this mushy? Well, there you're talking about one pollutant, trash, for a significant water body, but we knew what we were dealing with. Here you're talking about developing a program to deal with 33 TMDLs and every listed pollutant that creates an impairment to water quality or water body. So it has to be flexible, otherwise it's not workable. And the purpose of the example was to say, here's how it can work. Here's how we can work with the board and with the environmental agencies to come up with something that works. And we would submit that the same approach should be followed here. It needs to be flexible because there's so much going on. Plus you're looking at an order dealing with the entire state. The second thing I would say is, there's been discussion about TSOs, cleanup and abatement orders, cease and desist orders, et cetera. What hasn't been said is that those are all state mechanisms under the Port of Cologne Act. They don't provide per se, depending on how the permit would be written, for protection from third-party suits, whether it's the groups here or somebody else. In effect, they don't constitute compliance. The only thing that constitutes compliance with the permit is something in the permit that says if you do A, B, and C, you are in compliance. And our proposal is we'll give you the best we can. We'll give you BMPs that as a part of a WMP proposal. You look at it. You look at what we're trying to deal with. If you come back and say we need more, we have to give you more. If we give you more and we implement it, we should be in compliance, even if we can't meet the ultimate water quality standard. The goal is to meet the water quality standard. The statute doesn't require that MS4 permittees meet effluent limits. It requires that we do the best we can, the maximum extent practicable. Our ask is don't force us to do impractical requirements, particularly when we don't even know that those impractical requirements can meet the numbers. So we want to work with the board, all the boards, to come up with an approach that works. If we can do that across the state, that's great. We think it should be something that can be used in different permits across the state. But don't force us to meet numbers. If you put in numbers, it doesn't mean that water quality will be improved. At the end of the day, we're still left with BMPs. And we're still left with the same BMPs that we have before numbers versus after numbers. The end of the day is going to come down to your staff working with the permittee staff to come up with a plan that makes sense. And if we come up with a plan that makes sense, we implement the plan, we should be in compliance. If it turns out, in response to certain questions, that we're not actually meeting the standards, that's when the adaptive management process comes in. You come back to us and say, we think you can do more. And we say, okay, we'll do more. And we work together to do that. That's the approach that we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Ms. Purdy.
Thank you so much. We just had, I would say, 4 brief points that we wanted to make in closing, and then of course we're available if you have any questions for us or would like to discuss anything further. Let's see, the first thing that we wanted to just briefly touch on, you did hear some people talking today about or downplaying the value of what we call the watershed management program approach and really emphasizing the value of the enhanced program approach in our permit. And I just wanted to emphasize that as we were developing the permit, we recognized that not all permittees are going to be geographically located in a way that will really be conducive to doing the multi-benefit regional infiltration projects that are the cornerstone of the enhanced programs, which is why we offered the watershed management program approach. So I just wanted to point that out. We see value in the watershed management program approach. And in fact, if I had my slides back up, I would just point you to the fact that when you look at the watershed, the county map that shows all the watersheds that I showed you earlier, you'll actually notice that most of the watershed management programs are in the southeast corner of the county. And that's where geographically there just aren't the same opportunities for the infiltration that the upper San Gabriel, the upper LA, the upper Santa Clara have many more opportunities for those sorts of projects. That being said, as you've heard some speak about, some of those watershed management program groups are still looking for opportunities for regional type projects where they can within their watershed area. So I think that that is a valuable option to have in the permit for some permittees. The second point that I wanted to make is related to specifically the 85th percentile 24-hour event standard that we have in the permit for the enhanced watershed management programs. And there was significant discussion about that today and about the provision in the proposed order that kind of builds on that compliance mechanism in our order. And so I wanted to just first explain our thinking behind that particular water quality design standard. We did several years of work on the concept of a water quality design standard some years ago and found the 85th percentile 24-hour event to be an event that could, for many pollutants, reduce the annual pollutant load by around 94 to 95%, so quite significant. And the other thing that I want to emphasize that I don't feel like you have heard today about the enhanced programs is they are not only, required to, wherever possible, capture that volume, but they still have a number of other required elements within their enhanced watershed management program. And those include continuing to implement the standard or stormwater management program elements, the 6 core elements that we talk about, as well as the non-stormwater discharge prohibition provisions. And so there's, as you know, there's a plethora of non-structural BMPs, pollution prevention, source control, that are contained within those programs. So we have a high level of confidence that with the capture of that volume of stormwater, along with the implementation of the stormwater management programs, that over time, achievement of water quality standards will happen. So I wanted to touch on that. The third thing that I wanted to briefly cover is the environmental organization's proposal of using the different types of enforcement orders in lieu of the watershed management program and enhanced program approaches. And I did want to let you know that we at the regional board did consider that as a possibility. That was a comment that the environmental organizations made to us as well. And we do use that, and you probably saw that in the permit for TMDL final deadlines that have passed. We do have a provision, and I mentioned this in my comments this morning, for developing time schedule orders to provide additional time. But in general, we felt like a more proactive approach and an approach that was contained within the permit was a more constructive way to move forward. And we recognized, as I think you recognize, that time is needed in many cases to achieve these water quality standards. And so the watershed management programs and enhanced programs, I think in many ways, contain the elements that the environmental proposal presented to you this morning. It's really a matter of what is the dressing that's on them. So we have watershed management programs and enhanced programs within the context of a permit that have many of the same requirements for modeling, for monitoring, for the adaptive management process that you heard from the environmental organizations that they would propose within the context of an enforcement order. Then the last thing that I wanted to touch on briefly is, of course, the discussions about the safe harbor provisions. And I think really what it comes down to is, and we have a fundamental disagreement about the nature of the provisions that are in the LA County MS4 order. We've talked about it exhaustively in our responses to the receiving water limitation concept paper that you put out, as well as in our petition response for these 37 petitions. And we really believe strongly that the permit does not provide a safe harbor. Both during the planning period as well as during the implementation period, there are very clear requirements, there are deadlines, there are consequences for not meeting those, and there is in no way our enforcement authority taken away. So we still have the possibility of enforcement if any of those requirements or deadlines are not met by permittees. And as you heard me talk about this morning, we did find 7 of the permittees to have submitted deficient watershed management programs, and those permittees are now on the baseline program and will be evaluated on the basis of simply looking at their monitoring data and finding out whether their monitoring data indicates that they are in compliance with the water quality-based effluent limitations and receiving water limitations. And there's so many other things I would love to talk to you about, but in the interest of keeping it short, I'll leave it at those 4 issues unless you have questions for us, and we're all available.
Looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, actually.
It's always helpful, so go ahead. I mean, I'm sorry for people who maybe want to run out, but this is a really important opportunity for us, so.
Right, yeah, thank you. So Renee, I think I understood the point that that the regional board had a high level of confidence that compliance with both the 85th percentile retention design standard plus the traditional stormwater management requirements would in fact lead to achievement of water quality standards. So what was the thinking, or if you can tell us now or maybe in the written comments, what was the thinking about what would happen if you found that there still were exceedances of the water quality standards after those 85th percentile projects were built and after the traditional stormwater management measures were continued to be iterated, if you will?
Right, right. I think that's a really good question. And the way we envision that situation, first of all, I think we all recognize that many of the projects that will be implemented under the enhanced programs are going to take a number of years. And I heard Board Member Moore talk about how the fact we're really not planning on a permit term planning period. We're looking at a much longer term planning period. And the adaptive management process is something that is a part of the enhanced programs as well. And my feeling is that through that adaptive management process, and our intention was that over time, we've seen even non-structural BMPs improve. I mean, as a simple example, we've seen vast improvements in street sweeping technology from what they used to be. And I think we'll continue to see improvements, and we continue to see legislative efforts towards source control. And I'm actually one of the members on the Stormwater Strategic Initiative team, I'm happy to say. And one of the guiding principles that we've been really fleshing out with regard to that is source control and the power of these legislative efforts to try to address pollutants earlier in their life cycle. And so I think that over time, these enhanced programs, if we find that the retention and the implementation of the stormwater management programs is not leading to compliance with water quality standards over the next permit term or 2 permit terms, that we're going to continue to see an evolution of the stormwater program. And we're going to continue to see legislative initiatives that will start to address other pollutants like zinc and so forth, as have been done for copper, that will see improvements through non-structural measures. So I still think that that adaptive management process will continue to take place for the enhanced programs and will eventually get us to achieving water quality standards. And
If
yes,
I could just follow up on with it slightly more. Were you still going?
and can
Sure.
Sam add something
Sure.
first? Before?
Thank you. I just, to the number of resources that we had to explain to the board how the enhanced watershed management plans might work. There's a significant modeling effort that was undertaken by the County Flood Control District. It was an open process. It was funded by US EPA to lend a lot of veracity to the 90+% reduction in pollutant loads with the 85% storm. But all that being said, to answer your question, Phil, I think directly, it's always been the expectation of the Los Angeles Board that numeric limits be met, whether, again, as Renee said, whether it's within 1 term, within 2 terms, not quite as specific there, didn't get there, but it's always been with the number of TMDLs that we have. We're big fans of numeric metrics, either in receiving waters or in effluents and things like that, and limits. And so it was clearly the expectation of the board that the numeric limits would be met.
I'll just ask my slightly more general question then, because I think it's, we heard from the environmental petitioners that they are asking that final compliance be determined through monitoring. And as I read your order, or as I read our order, amending your order, I think that is the case, and I want to make sure that we're all clear or on the same page on that. So as I read the order, while you're in the WIMP-EWIMP process, the implementation of the control measures is compliance. But when you get to a final deadline, either a TMDL-based deadline or a receiving water deadline that the permittee may have set within the WIMP proposal, at that point, compliance has to be determined through monitoring. And I want to make sure that we're understanding what you wrote correctly, so that as we're revising it, we're coming to the same point.
Right. So for the enhanced watershed management programs, where retention of the 85th percentile 24-hour event is achieved, that volume is achieved, then final compliance is determined based on retention of that volume. So monitoring does occur, and for all programs, watershed management or enhanced programs, monitoring must occur both at the outfall and in the receiving water. But ultimately, compliance for areas where retention of that volume can be achieved is based on retention of that volume and implementation of the other required elements of the program.
For the life of the permit, for how long? This gets back to the time scale.
Well, this is This is a 5-year permit, and so we don't, I mean, you know, that what we were anticipating was that would be compliance. And yes, that's for this permit term written within this permit, but the expectation was because these projects many of them will not be probably implemented within this permit term, fully implemented. They won't be implemented until future permit terms. And so the expectation was that provision, that compliance determination, would not just be something that would be in the context of this 5-year permit term, but would be a feature of future permit terms as well.
I'm confused. So the language that, the language that you have in the order that clarifies this issue, that refers to, I don't know if it's final compliance. Is it your understanding that that language does what you just said?
Well,
Go ahead.
I would read it, and I don't have it right here with me. I don't know, Jennifer, do you have it? Yes, right here. So I think that, you know, we're all speaking about the language that says where water quality monitoring shows that final water quality-based effluent limitations and final receiving water limitations are not in fact being achieved, the permittee remains in compliance with the final WQBLs and final receiving water limitations only if the permittee proposes a plan for additional control measures for achievement of these final limitations and then submits the plan for approval. So my reading of that is, yes, it still relies on the retention of that volume as the compliance standard, but now requires additionally a plan of additional actions for ultimately achieving water quality standards. But it seems clear to me from the language that so long as that plan is submitted and approved, then the volume retention still constitutes compliance.
So the final date doesn't really matter as far as the 5-year period or sometime thereafter. What matters is whether or not the permittee has requested an adjustment.
Right, right.
And let me make sure I understand that request would be made in the event that water quality monitoring shows that receiving water limits are not being met, but other monitoring shows that the retention is being met.
Correct.
So, I mean, clearly you can't tie the hands of future regional boards, right,
True.
forever.
True.
So you can say what your intention is for a certain period of time. What happens under your thinking if you've set the retention? You may have already answered this, and so it's just, the retention is being met beautifully, 85%, but the receiving water limits aren't anywhere close to being met. What do you do?
Well, I think that's, I mean, there are a couple options at that point, depending on, I mean, one option is to come up with a plan to evaluate what else can be done to meet those receiving water limitations. If we're talking about a TMDL, a pollutant that's being addressed by a TMDL, one option is, of course, to reconsider that TMDL and reconsider the implementation program and schedule associated with that TMDL. So that's something that we can think about. Other options you've heard today, I mean, one thing that we have used a lot is the basin planning process, and specifically the water effect ratio process, and perhaps there's a way to look at a more site-specific objective that would still be protective of beneficial uses, but would provide permittees with a little bit more flexibility to achieve those. And certainly we're seeing that happen in a number of our watersheds already, so that may be completed by the time we get to this point. But we're seeing that that does make a big difference in some cases, and certainly makes it more feasible for the MS4 permittees to achieve the receiving water limitations. So I think that's another option, as a basin planning potentially type solution.
So that's one end of the spectrum. If you find that they can't be met, but they are doing a lot. What if they can't be met and your assumptions today about the 95% or whatever it is can't, you're wrong? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, are we writing again, people are spending a lot of money. I mean, what I'm hearing is a much different level of engagement than I heard in the preceding 20 years, having been one of those people, that there's just much more going on, and there's more agreement here over the need to do these multi-benefit projects, and there's the issue of the multiple benefits and potential trade-offs if you're actually getting action to happen to transform this area into one that's using its water molecules to do double, triple duty, which is the bigger picture vision that we can give lip service to, but we really have to do to meet the challenge of climate change. So in some ways, we're sitting here figuring out how do we achieve our goals under the Clean Water Act and Port Cologne while recognizing and indeed leveraging the multiple benefits of using water more intelligently and also greening our communities and just having a more integrated scheme. So it's a very complex conversation, and I'm just trying to figure out when people say it's sort of an open-ended period. I'm not going to dismiss anyone's good intentions here. I hear much better intentions or a more sophisticated view of what it is that can be done than I've heard in years, which I think is great. But there is an issue of where the rubber hits the road. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about your tuning up the other way. If you discover, 5, 10, it's a lot. Things do change, as people have said, what you might do. Because I think a lot of it is we have people agreeing to an overall objective. There's a lot that people agree about, but we've also heard a lot about the outliers that people fear. So you have very legitimate fears that we're not going to have fishable, swimmable waters that people are wanting. So they're worried about getting that guarantee that we're going to get there, wherever there is. I think if we get 95% to there, the issue will be very different than it is today, frankly. The surfers in Malibu will be much happier. Everybody, all of those things will happen, and good things will happen. So it may be a different level of discussion. And on the other hand, you have the fear of an unlimited cost that the folks feel they can't bear, or that there's just uncertainty that they, even if they do all these things, that they'll have some measure of safety.
Yeah, it is complicated, as you said. And the one thing that I was going to say, and I'm not sure if this directly answers your question or what you're trying to get at, but I do think that as we do a better job as a region and as a state of valuing stormwater and starting to create partnerships, there may be incentives to capture even more than the 85th percentile 24-hour event. And I don't know if I mentioned it, I think I might have, but there are some cities, some permittees already, that have some stormwater retention basins that are capable of capturing more than that volume. And I think as we're better able to work out the details of how do we monetize stormwater and create agreements for getting stormwater in the ground, then that may create stronger incentives to perhaps capture even more than that volume that we've specified at this point. So I'm not sure if that exactly addresses your issue, but Sam has something he'd like to add as well.
Yeah, and I agree with everything Renee said, but I'm not sure, I remain concerned that she didn't answer your question. And I think the direct answer is, in the State Board order, we believe the State Board has got it correctly. Essentially, if you get to any of these junctures along the way, after the 85th, maybe the 85th plus percentile storm is captured, we're still not meeting water quality standards, a plan will be required. If the plan is submitted, they remain in compliance, and then, of course, that plan is going to have to be executed and implemented. But we think at this point we're in agreement with the draft order, and that does capture the board's intent.
And for everything other than the 85th percentile stormwater event, where you have something in the WIMP, for example, then it's pretty clear that monitoring is at the end point. There's monitoring, and actual compliance with the standard is what constitutes compliance.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, it's based on the final deadlines are evaluated based on monitoring data.
Hey, right, I have a quick question.
No, go ahead.
On page 44 of the order, you know, that we talk about adding some language on this very point, you know, about the EWMP and doing the monitoring and seeing if we achieve standards. But left over from the existing LA regional board permit, there's a sentence at the end that says, this provision shall not apply to final trash WQBELs. And so I just have a simple question, which is, and it relates to some discussions we've had, but you know, the low impact development implementation in green streets and that sort of thing are a way to control trash from getting from streets to receiving waters insofar as it creates a barrier of flow. And so I wanted to ask this question is, why can't we take credit for trash removal in LID type infrastructure? I have some ideas why not, but I was wondering what you might answer to that.
Well, my initial thought was when we were evaluating this, we really felt as though stormwater retention was really not going to be addressing trash per se. And there are other mechanisms that you've heard, you know well about that we've used in the Los Angeles region and now throughout the state in terms of various full capture type devices and partial capture devices that are very effective at addressing trash. And so we really just felt as though this retention standard didn't necessarily fit with trash controls as well as it does with a lot of other pollutants.
But what do you think about my point?
I do think your point is a good one. How much credit we would want to provide, I mean, I think that that's something that we would want to evaluate, how effective those things like LID and site design could be at being a barrier from trash reaching receiving waters. I don't know that we have a good quantification of that yet, whereas we have good quantification of the effectiveness of a number of other trash controls.
Yeah, I understand that and respect that. I like to point it out. There's a host of reasons why low-impact development principles help with water resource goals. And, I brought it up during the drinking water discharge permit. That, if drinking water discharges to LID type infrastructure, they get mitigated by LID, in terms of impacting receiving waters. So there's a host of reasons why, and I think trash is one of those things. Mm-hmm. I can though imagine a scenario where a retention type structure would collect trash and then it would be wind blown away from that then to receiving water. It just depends on where you are in your watershed.
And also, I know in LA where there have been swales and LID kinds of BMPs put in, and they have lost popularity in the community because they collect trash. Mm-hmm. So it's a constant problem if they are used to collect trash.
There has to be a management scheme that goes along with it. Yeah, very good.
I know since you guys brought up trash, I was disagree with some of the statements you heard earlier about what we're doing being totally dissimilar to the trash TMDL because with the mouth question, because when we had the one gum wrapper arguments in the early days of the TMDL, we said, look, put in the full capture and let's see where we get down the road. And there's still going to be some trash in the rivers. And then we decide where to go from there. And it's kind of not unlike the EWIMP and the storm retention, that we're going to get there. We're going to see what's been possible on both the BMP side and the retention side, with the goal of achieving the standards, but dealing with it, somewhat down the road, because we have a bit of a crystal ball situation now. So,
and I'd like to just add one other thought, Board Member Moore. On your question, basically, I don't think we had the analytical tools at this point to look at LID as we had available to us during the permit development for retention. I think that, so it's very difficult for us to sort of quantify the quote-unquote credit that we could give at this point. But the permit it has a very strong LID requirement in it for new development. It's pretty well state-of-the-art with all the other recent permits that have been adopted in other areas of the state. So our board also recognizes that as well, but there was quite a bit of background modeling data that's been very well vetted and reviewed talking about what retention could provide in terms of pollutant load reduction relative to LID. Still, so we didn't feel quite as secure, if you will, and as going out there to provide the same type of credit that we did for retention.
Other question? Go ahead.
A comment that I found today very, very interesting and very helpful. Obviously, because of the ex parte prohibition, we can't have this dialogue outside of this forum. And I found, the exchanges to be very helpful. Also, the comments from my colleagues have been very helpful. Some of which, I think most of which I would agree with. Some, there were a few that might merit some further discussion. So what I was going to suggest, and it's not a specific request right now, because I would like to see the written comments. Yeah. And I would like to fully read and understand them, and perhaps even read the transcript. But after doing so, our usual process is that, our advisory staff would then meet with us and then develop a draft. We release it, and then we'll hold a hearing or something. What I'd like to toss out, just for consideration, not to be determined today, but after we read the comments, might we discuss, not together, but perhaps with Mr. Howard, the opportunity of having another workshop-like format where we can have some answers and back and forth discussion, and where we as board members might get a chance to discuss among ourselves some of the relevant issues before giving staff direction on further revisions to the proposed order. Because we don't have the opportunity of discussing, amongst ourselves these very significant issues. And so today was the first time that I've heard some of the concepts being raised by my colleagues. So I should just throw that out as a different approach to how we usually respond to these petitions. But I think because of the significant issues involved here and the complexity and the presidential nature of the decisions that we're about to make on a policy level, that perhaps we keep this in mind as an alternative way forward.
Yeah, I think it's worth thinking about, because we barely did talk about it. Mostly we were asking questions, and this was hardly the full conversation that we would want to have. So, because we've been focused on hearing from the people who are here. So let's toss that in and think about it. Thank you for the suggestion. Series of conversations sometimes gets you further. So, all right, other questions? All right, with that, I just want to thank everybody for the time and attention. That was very helpful for us. Again, it opens up issues, what to think about, how to look at your comments as they come in, and then we'll decide how to proceed next. But thank you all for your time and attention. Really appreciate it. Next, we have item 4, but is there no one here for item 4, or are we discharging our responsibilities by doing what we did?
Yes, what we did is we checked to see if anyone was here to speak about item 4. Those people that were willing to leave talked to Leslie before she left, and so we'll incorporate their concerns as we move forward.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would point out is you already did have at least one public informational item on that, so.
Right.
You certainly discharged your statutory obligations.
Yeah, that was part of my question. Okay. No, thank you. That's good. Next item on the agenda is board member reports. I'd like to actually suggest that we can, depending on how long tomorrow goes, that we bounce that in the executive director's report till tomorrow.
One thing is, it depends on how late we go, because I think we have to go at about 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock? I thought we were here all day, and I knew we wouldn't last all day. So let's just wait and see. I just sense, actually, I'm the E in the room, so I'm energized from listening to everybody all day, but everybody else probably wants to melt down or drink, so.
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
I was just going to say deferring, if we have time tomorrow after the workshop, talking board member reports and executive director's report, as opposed to dispensing, because.
We just do the executive director's report today, and so that way we don't have to.
That would be fine. I can do that. Do it in a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just had two items I wanted to bring to the board's attention in the executive director's report. They're both on the first page. The first one, or rather the second one, is the online nitrate information tool has been put out on the web. Interestingly, when it was first put out, I naturally went right to it to see what the nitrate polluted wells there were near my house, but it didn't work. So, but I'm happy to report, though, that it works now. That apparently it didn't work with Internet Explorer, it worked with other browsers. But
Really?
anyway,
Oh,
they fixed that right away. So.
Thank you.
So it's very interesting. I encourage you to take a look at areas you might be interested in. Of course, it's not a complete tool in the least that tell people where there might be real problems, but it does say if we, the water boards, know that there is a problem in this area, it makes that information very accessible to people who want to search a particular region. But,
what kind of response have we gotten to it? I thought I would hear more response either by email or in the media about it. I saw a little bit about it in
personally,
media.
I haven't heard a word.
Yeah.
Haven't heard anything, John?
No.
Sharon?
Have you?
No.
Yeah. I would just like to comment that I really want to thank you for your work on this, and also John Borkovich and others. There was a whole team that worked on this, and when I got my hands on it, I attempted, and I had some difficulty as well. And then once I did get on it, there was sort of a dry run. I had some questions, and we ran it by CDFA, and they had a series of questions and comments, and so the staff took a little more time, and were quite responsive to CDFA. And then I worked with a little ag roundtable periodically, and I shared it with them. I haven't heard back. I just asked all of them to go on and let me know if they had concerns. So I haven't heard anything beyond that.
We did work with CDFA, and I think we satisfied most of their concerns. There were a couple that we just had too much of a problem trying to get to, but we sat down and talked with them a number of times and worked our way through it very nicely, I think. The second one I wanted to mention is under SB4, we're required to sign an MOA with Dogger by January 1 of this year. You know, there are a couple of ways that the Water Board can proceed in writing or in getting MOAs approved. One way is that I can just sign it, which is what's happened sometimes in the past. And sometimes, if the MOAs generate controversy, we bring them to the board with a resolution where the board would resolve to direct the executive director or permit the executive director to enter into an MOA with another party. We kind of thought, quite honestly, I thought this was going to be relatively non-controversial. Probably, bad thought on my part, because obviously fracking has got a great deal of people's interest. This really is just an MOA that says, here are the procedures we're going to use as we share information with Dogger to meet our statutory responsibilities regarding well stimulation activities under SB4. We have a second MOA that we also are updating from the 80s that just talks about our general activities with Dogger, and so we are working on that as well. This particular MOA is a bit more narrow. So anyway, I would offer to the board that there are two ways to proceed. There is a January 1 deadline, and I can go ahead and sign over the next week or two. As you heard, we had some concern from an environmental organization who felt that the time that the regional boards had to review the well stimulation permit applications of 14 days was inadequate for the regional boards. That under the MOA, that can be extended to 45 days if upon request, but it is 14 to 45 days. That is relatively short for the kind of way we normally respond to things. It's kind of in the spirit of what I'd say we do with Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. For a long time we had 10 days to respond to once they did a timber harvest plan application, they'd send it to us and we get 10 days. Because we're not the principal regulating agency. We're just somebody who has the opportunity to comment on these things, and they don't even have to necessarily take our comments, though of course they generally do. But in any event, one approach is to just go ahead and sign it. Like I say, it's largely procedural. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention as well that WISPA has also expressed concern about this MOA and is setting up a meeting with me to discuss what their concerns are. I don't know what they are yet, but I'll be hearing from them, I'm sure, in the next few days. The other way is that we could post it. When we put drafts out on the internet before the statutory deadline, and people ask us if we met the statutory deadline, my general response is yes, it's posted on the internet, even if it isn't fully signed yet. So I kind of feel like we've met our legal obligation by posting it and making it available to the public. And we could solicit comments and workshop it with the board with a resolution. The one awkwardness that strikes me about this is that this MOA is being signed by both me and each of the regional board EOs. And so if we start doing that, then are we going to have all the regional boards want to have their, have it brought to them for their approval? And it's also a little odd for the water board perhaps to say, yes, this should be signed, and then we send it to the EOs where their regional board might have some concerns. But so it's because it's a bit messy because it's got a whole bunch of signatures, not just mine and Dogger's. But those are the two options, and either one works fine. It's already public, and we can go ahead and post it and bring it to the board in January, ask people for comments, and let you guys have an opportunity to hear from the environmental community and from WISPA about what concerns they have.
Well, so I'd be interested in what the regional boards think.
Oh, you covered,
Sure.
There was another point, I don't know if I got it right, but I was taking notes on that public forum, that permit completeness is determined by Dogger, and the suggestion that the water boards be the final arbiter of that decision.
I just want to make sure it's clear that the permit is for the construction and activity of well stimulation. The groundwater monitoring that needs to accompany that is not included in that decision. So they have to make a decision that the permit's complete. It doesn't become operable until the regional board or state board says the monitoring is sufficient. Yeah. So it's a separate piece of it.
Yeah, in other words, that we still have the full authority to stop things in their tracks if we're not satisfied with the monitoring aspect.
That's correct, and that's one reason why the short time frame isn't so worrisome to myself, is that it is not on the areas that we have primary interest in.
But we also still have that 14 to 45 day window to sort of ring a bell if we want to.
If there was something in the permit application that concerned us, a prime example would be if it was located in an aquifer that wasn't exempt. That would be something that we would comment on and say that we had a concern.
Tammy, you had thoughts?
Yeah, having been the one who asked for this item to be inserted into the executive director's report, thank you, Mr. Howard. But also having read the proposed MOA, I am very comfortable with it. Now, granted, I haven't had the benefit of hearing what the details concerns are from WISPA, and besides the one commenter that spoke during the public forum today, I haven't received any details on concerns from the environmental community. But I would suggest that, since this is something that is delegated to our executive director, and he is going to be meeting with the stakeholders who are concerned, that we authorize him to proceed as he feels appropriate, and then report back to us in January, waylaying, whatever concerns and whatever resolutions that he reached. And obviously, I would trust him that if the concerns were significant enough and he were to agree with them, that he would take the appropriate actions there as well. So I'm very comfortable with delegating this to Tom, since he's made the commitment of meeting with the stakeholders.
So you're going to meet with Sierra Club as well?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, yes, I intend to reach out to them and make sure that they have a full opportunity to express any concerns they have, since, as they said, they just barely saw it and didn't have.
Oh, well, yeah, and so then if you think it's something that we should go have a hearing on, or I would defer to you.
Sure, that's fine.
Just, or you're good at staying in touch with us. See, there's no need for extra process if it's not necessary. It may well be that people just need to understand it, what it is and what it isn't, and what our tools are, and all of that. So.
And I think that the comment from the Sierra Club representative this morning was focused on actually a third MOA that you haven't mentioned, Mr. Howard, but one that staff will be working on and that is the MOA with respect to the underground injection control.
And that's
projects.
not this.
And it's not this, and it's not the general MOA with Dogger either. So it's a third MOA, which many of the environmental communities representatives have expressed concerns about.
I think this is just more the second MOA with the update
is
of
it?
the 88 MOA, which talks about the underground injection control program and how we're going to work together. And so we're just going to be eliminating that one and replacing it with a new one, and that'll be in the next couple of months.
Well, without getting into a lot of details, I mean, I will alert you that, and Mr. Bishop was in the same meeting with me, and I will admit not having a great deal of familiarity with that MOA, but there was some implication there that in that MOA, we waived our authority to issue WDRs, which I find to be absolutely unimaginable, now that I'm a member, and I have always been a member of the Michael Alpha Fan Club, but he would actually allow that to happen.
I think this was before Michael's time.
Oh, okay. So that, I think, was what raised my concerns with respect to the UIC-related MOA.
Okay.
And I would just add that the fact that there are two MOUs, or MOAs rather, should be noted somewhere, because people
don't know.
If they don't know there's another one, they will put all their hopes and values into this one.
Well,
and
wonder
if that's
why
not what it
groundwater's
is,
missing, right.
then let's make it clear that there are two.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
No, thank you. That was useful. And thank you for suggesting we do that now. And then with that, we will recess until tomorrow at 9. Got it right? Okay, thank you. Thanks for your help.
Are we truly cut off at 1 o'clock? Is that true?
No.
Oh.
I think Steve's
You just made it up.
I have a 4 o'clock flight.
So he's